Hello everyone, my name is Paola Castrejon and this is my presentation on fundamentals of musculoskeletal biomechanics, specifically on agonist, antagonist, and synergist muscle roles. So to begin, in our introduction, we kind of went over biomechanics. Biomechanics is the study of how musculoskeletal system interacts to create movements. This includes how muscles, bones, joints work together, and how mechanical forces act on the body. So, a solid understanding of biomechanics helps us recognize how exercise can put stress on the body. Um, Understanding biomechanics can improve technique during fitness, maximize movement efficiency, and reduce injury risk. These principles can serve as a foundation of an effective resistance training program. Um, so this slide kind of goes over why this topic is important. This topic, I think, is essentially important for individuals who need kind of training variability and who I think are experiencing plateaus in their training program. When we understand the roles muscles play in producing controlling movements, we can choose exercises that are more intentionally and personally to our needs. This helps create balanced training programs that can target weaknesses, reduce imbalances, and promote a better longer term progress in our training. And then we go into a little bit of an overview of the roles and of the three muscle groups or muscle systems that we're going to go over. So, starting off with the antagonist, it's the muscle that's directly producing movements. So, for example, um, during a bicep curl, it would be the bicep that's the agonist. And then we have the antagonist that is the opposite, that performs the opposite movement and helps control or slow down the action. And then we have the synergist, which supports the agonist by stabilizing joints and adding extra support or force when needed. And then all three of them need to work as a team in order to ensure um, that movement is smooth, coordinated, and safe. So touching up again on the agonist, which is our prime mover, the muscle directly that's most involved in bringing movement. So for example, again, in our bicep curl, the bicep brachii would be our agonist because it reflexes the elbow, and then strengthening specifically the agonist muscles can improve force production and performance, which is important in athletic settings and general fitness. In programming, we need to structure certain days where we target the agonist muscles directly through controlled or isolated movements. And then we move into the antagonist, which is the controller. The antagonist again performs the opposite action of the agonist. Its job is to slow down or stop movement, providing joint control and stability. So, for example, during our bicep curl, the triceps would serve as the antagonist in this case. Um, if the antagonist is weak, this can increase injury because they can't properly control the movement. So, balanced agonist and antagonist strength is essential, especially around major joints. So, our major joints, right? So, it would be our knee, our shoulder, our hip. Um, so, it's extremely important to make sure that both the agonist and the antagonist have the sufficient strength for the movements. We go into our Synergist, which is the stabilizer and the helper. Um, the Synergist assists the agonist by stabilizing joints or adding force. For example, the brachialis supports the biceps during elbow flexion, and the rotator cuff stabilizes the shoulder during upper body movements. Um, so weak synergists often lead to compensation, poor lifting technique, and can increase injury risk. This is why training the stabilizing muscle is as important as the prime movers. So we go into our first concept, which is we're going to go over three different concepts, and the three different concepts kind of touch up on um, how these three different muscle systems um, work in different concepts in our body. So our first one is our neuromuscular coordination. Our neuromuscular coordination refers to the ability of the agonist, antagonist, and synergist to activate in the correct sequence and synchronization. So good coordination allows for efficient, controlled movements, while if we have poor coordination, it can lead to compensation and a lot of strain and stress in our joints. This is why learning proper technique and important or heavy compound lifts is important. Um, so you're not just training your muscles, we need to train our nervous system to be synchronized and to communicate adequately during activity. And then concept number two is going over the biomechanical lever systems. So, as we've learned, most human movement operates through the type 3 lever system, where muscles apply force close to the fulcrum and the resistance is farther away. This means our muscles must produce more force than the actual resistance. So, naturally, we are disadvantaged. So, proper technique can help maximize this mechanical system. Small adjustments in joint angles or grip width can shift the mechanical advantage. And yeah, we just need to make sure that we are changing the mechanical advantage with as muscles act as a prime movers. In concept number three, reciprocal inhibition. So reciprocal inhibition is a neurological process where the antagonist automatically reflexes when the agonist contracts. Without this reflex, movement would be limited, and limited reciprocal inhibition is very common in people with like high tight hip flexors or hamstrings. So, for example, here we are using the PNF stretching techniques. Um, Using this technique by contracting one muscle group to relax the opposing group will allow for a deeper stretch. So, again, for example, here we're stretching the hamstring. Um, we want to contract the quad in order for the hamstring to relax and go into a deeper stretch. Concept number four talks about the specificity of training and how important it is to train those three different prime movers depending on the sport that the athlete is in or the main activity the individual is performing in. This means the agonist and antagonist pairings must be trained in patterns for different sports and sport demands. So, for example, in soccer players, we need strong quads and strong hamstrings. in order for us to, or for them to produce sharp turns and have fast strides, and also produce force in order to kick the ball. Once we strengthen the quads and the hamstrings, we're also protecting the knee joints, and decreasing the chances of the knee getting hurt. In our first research article that we found, this journal studied how strength training changes muscle architecture and neural activation. The researchers found improvements in agonist activation and overall muscle strength. They also observed that imbalances between agonist and antagonist can increase injury. This research reinforces why training both prime movers and opposing muscle groups is essential for joint stability. In our second research, it analyzes the antagonist coactivation during a drop jump. They discovered that the proper levels of antagonist activation help protect joints during fast and dynamic movements. This highlights the importance of technique training and neuromuscular control for athletes involved in jumping, sprinting, or rapid deceleration. So, like we said, it's important to not just train the muscles, but it's also important to train our neuromuscular coordination and synchronization. And then in our third research study, it looked at how the synergist muscles contribute during resistance exercise, especially under fatigue. The body relies more heavily on the synergist to maintain movement during fatigue, and this then weakens the synergist energy, or the synergist system, and compensation starts to occur. This research emphasizes the importance of training and stabilizing muscles such as the rotator cuff, the core, the hip, and all the important joints. And then some training applications to improve quality of training based off this information that we just went over. These concepts can be directly applied to training programs. Altering agonist and antagonist training days improves recovery and balance. So, for example, alternating would mean one day you train the biceps and the back muscles, and the next day you'll train the triceps and the shoulders, right? So the day before that you did the biceps. The biceps that day were the agonist, and the triceps were the antagonists. So the next day you're gonna basically vice versa. And then from there, go into leg trainings as well. And then also adding in synergist focus training ensures stability and prevents compensation. So we can't forget to really train the synergist system, because it acts as a stabilizer, right? And if that isn't strong enough, then our stabilizer is gone. And then also using unilateral exercise can help identify imbalances while training in different movement planes. So, for example, for me, when I'm doing a split squat, I can tell that my left leg is a lot weaker, so I need to work on that one. Finally, tempo variations and slow eccentrics. Innovation idea, create a wearable sleeve where it can detect activation in the 3 muscle groups and provide real-time feedback, and then from there we can correct technique and improve any imbalances or so on and so forth. And then lastly, these are my references, referencing the 3 articles as well as our book that we read this semester.